Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Vinh and Ali show. This particular show is going to be slightly different from our usual ones. This one, we're just doing what we call a chinwag. And chinwag is, I think it was a British saying or an Australian saying, where we just wag our chins and have a chat with each other and answer some of the questions that some of you have sent in. We're also doing this live, so as comments come in as well, we'd love to take some of your questions and answer them. Hey, Ali, welcome to the podcast, brother.
Hello, Vin. How are you? Doing something different today. I like it. I was just picturing that. How do you actually wag a chin? Like, what is it? Is it just like a wiggle? Or?
Yeah, I think it's just a metaphor, mate. It's not actually literal.
The cup looks awesome. Yes, I did notice the cup. Very good. On brand. Nice.
Man, I feel like I've really made an effort here. I put on a jacket. I even freaking brought some merch here, and look at you in a hoodie. You don't even care.
Hey, I've got this in the background. I've got your face.
Yeah, but I've also got the logo in the background too. So
all right. You win. Okay. First victory to Vin.
No, it's just like one of those relationships, when you go to an anniversary dinner and one person's put so much effort into the present, the other person just got you a pair of jocks.
This is my life story. I'm always that guy who buys the jocks.
Oh, gosh. All right. Well, look, I'm going to jump into some questions that when I put out into my Instagram, some people started to ask some. And I would love to ask you this question, then I'll reply with my answer. Okay?
Perfect.
So the first one I got was, what's your well-being practice?
Ooh, what's my well-being practice? So I've tried a lot over the years, as you know, Vin, and I've shared a lot of my little experiments with you over time too. But I'd say at the moment, the core of it is wake up in the morning somewhere between 7 and 9. I've always been a night person. I love staying up pretty late. So seven's probably, I've tried the 5 a.m., 6 a.m. wake ups and it doesn't work for me that much. So it's somewhere probably between 7 and 9. Usually the first thing I'm trying to do is not get too sucked into reactive things. So the practice of not opening up email or Slack or social media and just giving the mind a little bit of time just to rest and take in the world, if you call it. Sometimes in the morning, there's a little kid in the bed as well for a cuddle, which is usually a pretty nice way to wake up when one of the boys jump into bed. So it's sort of just getting, try to get as present as possible from the get-go. And then from there, if it's going really well and I've got a bit of time, I love to read for maybe 20 minutes to half an hour. That's a bit of the well-being routine. Or watch like a movie or a TV show, something like that, just to
in the morning.
To start the day. Like that's been a nuance. Just just get some. So rather than, because before the practice was usually like, and I don't know if a lot of other people do this, but I'll just sit there and you're in the Facebook loop or a news site or Instagram. And I'm like, rather than doing that, if my brain does want something to activate it, which is why I think we do grab those things as a little bit, it's like a little dopamine caffeine hit. I think that's why we pick up the phone straight away, is I'd way rather do it by reading or putting in some information that I'm actually choosing rather than something that's reactive. So that might be a form of that. Meditation. So there'll generally be a 20-minute type of meditation pretty early on in that morning routine. Wim Hof breathing is one that I'll do daily, 3-4 cycles of breathing exercises. At the moment, loving trying to get a walk in, some sort of just physical activity, whether it's a half an hour walk. And journaling, obviously, is another pretty big one. So that morning routine isn't the same every day. Like I'll do it in different orders, but generally I'll try to allocate about 1 to 2 hours to those 4 or 5 things every single day.
Far out. That's crazy, dude. I mean, I know that you always do that, but just hearing you describe it all sounds kind of overwhelming to me.
Yeah, that's why I don't have it too structured. Like to me, it sounds like now it's more automatic.
Right.
But yeah, I've had times where I've had like 10 different things on a checklist and I wanted to knock them all off. And then it just became exhausting. Like you'd wake up in the morning or you'd be like, I've got to do all these things in the routine to tick it off. And I'm like, no, I won't do that. Whereas now I have those 4 or 5 things and I'll generally do them like, I would say pretty consistently every day. But when and how I do them might change a little bit. So that way it still allows for the reality of life to unfold as well. Whereas there was a point in time where I'd get a little bit annoyed when you couldn't complete that routine. Like say if there was something that popped up or just didn't have the time to do it and be like, oh, well the day's sort of wrecked. Like I've been able to get it in there. So now I've just got a little bit more flexibility with it.
Well, I mean, if I was to share mine, I feel almost ashamed, but I will have the courage and muster the courage to tell the truth on what my morning routine is like. The first thing I do in the morning is I grab my phone and I check my emails and I...
Yeah, we all do.
The opposite
we
to
all
you, right?
want to do it.
So I want to and I allow myself to. So literally, I kid you not, I've done the whole, don't go to your phone and everything before. Yeah. I have done that. But recently, the first thing I do is I go to my phone and I check and I go, how many people have bought my online course overnight? 1. That's cool. Yay.
And then do you get really sad if it's like 0 or you've opened up the email and it's just promotional emails like re-sign up for your vitamin supplements or whatever it's going to
be? What's even more hilarious is I checked mine this morning and I had like 3 or 4 notifications from Stripe and 2 of them were failed payments because people couldn't like process their credit cards. And I was like, no, why won't you just take their money, Stripe? But so first thing I do is I go straight to my phone and I check to see if anyone's purchased my online course. Second thing I do is I immediately open up my emails to see if I've gotten any gigs for virtual keynotes. And then third thing I do is I check social media to see if anyone sent me a message to ask me for a coupon for my online course. So I literally spend about 15 minutes, the room's all dark because unlike you, I love sleeping at 9 p.m. So hey, there's one good thing. I sleep at about 9 these days and I get up around 4:35. Mm-hmm. So when you compare that to the optimal morning, get up early.
Yeah, you're on it.
I'm getting up early.
One. Yeah.
But I'm getting up early and then immediately pacifying hard on the phone for a good 15 minutes. Then you have a cold shower. Okay, very cool, Ali. Very hip. I, on the other hand,
that's what all the cool kids are doing at the moment.
Yeah, it's all the cool kids are cold plunging and everything. Yeah. I have a beautiful warm shower that's really nice and hot and gets me all steamy.
That's awesome. So after you're all agitated from the failed payments and like you just wander into this really comfortable warm shower. Beautiful.
Yep. Beautiful. And then I'm feeling probably now a little bit anxious but comfortable at the same time. So it's a bit confusing for my body. And then I rectify that by going down and then just hitting up a long black, getting caffeinated. So now the anxiety kind of lessens because I'm slightly buzzed and I'm like, no, I can take on the day. And I walk into the studio and I actually journal. And I turn on my lights because it makes this room look nice. And then I feel like all professional. And then I turn on a bit of music and then, I'm in the spot. And I'm journaling for about 30 minutes. These days I'm going for about 45. And while I'm journaling, one of the powerful things that I find helps me is that I write down all my worries. And generally when I wake up, even though I go straight to the pacifier, I still find that whatever worries me from that, I just write it down and it goes away. And any other worries I have, maybe because I had, dreams or thoughts or the night before, I just write it all down. And it's just like a mental dump. And then it allows me to feel fresh after that, caffeinated, ready to go.
Yep.
Oh, and I do take a bunch of vitamins in the morning. My wife's a pharmacist, so I take a bunch of vitamins. I take these Inner Health Plus things, and then I just drug myself up, and then I'm good to go and start the day.
I like it.
And I mean, I think that's as much as wellness goes. In terms of that question, what's your well-being practice? I really only do that in the morning. And one last thing I'll mention about my well-being practice is yesterday I was starting to feel kind of anxious at the end of the day. And I didn't know where that anxiety was coming from. And instead of sitting there and normally just allowing that anxiety to take me over, I said to Pei Wen, hey, do you mind, instead of me bathing Xander tonight, do you mind if I jump on the bike and smash out 45 minutes or 50 minutes of a bike ride? And then she said, yeah. And then I did it and I felt better. So I use that as a tactic to help me get out of those little crappy mood, those situations where you feel crappy. I just jump on my exercise bike and go to town and put on a movie.
Like it. A follow-up question. Out of all of those things that you do, if you could only pick one of them for optimal well-being, if you get to choose one, what are you choosing?
Pacifier. I'm kidding. If I had to choose one.
Emails every single day.
Emails and Stripe notifications. Yeah. I would, this is really hard. If I only could choose one, damn it. I would say it's the exercise bike, because anytime I feel frustrated, angry, upset, anxious, exercising releases it all for me. And it's not kind of, I'm going for a stroll. There's not like a light bike ride. I have to go at it hard, because the harder I go at it, the more I get rid of all those negative emotions, the more I'm able to defeat them. So I would have to choose the bike. How about you? What would you choose if you had to pick only one out of your ridiculous list of things that seem like you're a Zen master?
No, it's not a Zen master.
No, it is. You're basically a Buddha.
Just trying to get through the day.
We're going to change our logo. We're going to change our logo, and I'm going to turn you into a little bit of a Buddha.
Nah.
And a little monk.
I think if I'm struggling a little bit, the one that changes my state of mind the most is probably the Wim Hof breathing or deep breathing techniques. I think if I'm really low, for example, I'd say it's like a 95% chance of success of doing 3-4 of those breathing cycles and like really focusing on them. Like you said with the bike riding, 3 to 4 of those cycles, and it should have a pretty good positive impact on whatever that mental state is. That's probably the go-to, but even like mantra style meditations are pretty good too. Because usually I think, when we're speaking about anxiety and well-being, for me, and I don't know if it's the same for you, like that feeling comes from when your mind is just focusing on something that you either can't control or it's looking too far forward into the future. Like it's very cliche nowadays, but everyone's like, be in the moment, be present. I think that's where that feeling comes from. So whether it's exercise or walking or watching a show or journaling or breathing or whatever it is, I think they all kind of work, because if you really hone in, they can be little tools to get you into the present moment. Whereas checking the emails or worrying about, the Stripe payments, even though we know this, it's like that's not going to put you into the moment. Right? Like it's going to get you thinking, oh crap, now I need to go on. I need to go fix the payment. I need to apologize to 4 people. I need to change my marketing strategy to get more in. So tomorrow when I wake up, that email, it just starts another loop. Whereas I think that's where a couple of those other bits and pieces just, can help us get into the zone. And I think that's why we all do them nowadays, or they're so popular because of the world that we live in at the moment. There's so much that's trying to pull us away from the moment.
That's something I really admire about you, is you do that so well, whereas I fall victim to the temptation of it. I can begin and start these routines of not going to the pacifier, but then I find myself there are times, especially because I just released the online course a week ago. See, I'm justifying it already. I give myself permission to fall out of that routine because I'm justifying it. Oh, it's okay. You just released the course. Of course, you've got to maintain it. You've got to make sure you work on it and not give people terrible experiences when they're buying your product, right? So yeah, dude, really inspired by your consistency, and I'm very aware that this is not good, and I will slowly not use the dummy as often.
And even on my side, I wish that I could practice it perfectly, but I'm nowhere near practicing those things perfectly. But for me, it's the improvement of that practice. Like it's something that, I think that we both now focus on more. And I think that's the whole thing with it, is that you just continue to the practice of improvement. And a lot of the times it's just awareness. like getting into the habit of catching yourself. It's like, oh yeah, well, like I found recently, it's like so many times the mind will be like, oh, let's not meditate or let's not do that because it's the easy option, and that's probably a really good trigger off. Maybe I do need to now do that. So yeah, I'm by no means a perfect practitioner. I know that I'd say I'm like in middle level. Like you hear stories of people that are like religious in the way that they practice their well-being and mindful activities, whereas I'm still a big fan of just using what I think is productive, and just like the ultimate for me. The end of the day, the goal is to make the day as awesome as possible. So if these tools and tactics and tips help, perfect.
Hey, that's greght. All right. Well, that's us answering that first question. Now I'll throw it to you, and we'll kind of do one question at a time from each one of our audiences, right? So what do you have?
All right, this is my joke question, so it's not a real one. I want to do another one. But this was from Romeo, my 4-year-old. And it was, how much farts have you done?
And I remember when you sent me this yesterday when we were talking. As you sent it to me, I did a fart, and Paywen was literally upset. Because of how smelly the fart was. And this is definitely TMI for those listening, but it was hilarious because she got aggressive. She was like, oh my God, Vinny. And then smacks me so hard in the chest.
So good.
But
so good.
I would say to answer this seriously, I mean, I know it's not a serious question, but I'd like to answer it seriously.
Well, I'll cut this video and I'll show it to Romeo because I think he really does want to know the answer.
Well, because it's the truth. I mean, look, I think one of the things that we have to make sure we do on this particular episode is let's just make sure we tell the absolute transparent truth on all of it, right? Let's not hold back. Let's not hold back. This is who we are.
Yeah.
We're disgusting, filthy men.
We might have to delete this after the live stream, but that's fine.
This is the episode that only those who watched it live would ever, that's the only way to experience it.
Yeah.
I would say that number of farts per day, per 24-hour period, I would say for me would be in excess of 30.
Yep.
Easy.
That's okay. Yeah.
Solid. It's not, it's nothing. You don't hear that and go, oh, it's not a lot. It's not heaps. It's not, I have a problem and probably need to go see the doctor, but it's probably you should.
There's like 50 comments. They're like, no, you need to go see a doctor. Like that's not normal.
You're dying. I'd say about 30. I'd say about 30. And I have understood that when I eat less of certain foods, I do fart less. However, I'm not willing to make those compromises because the things I eat that cause me to fart, I absolutely enjoy them. And I'm not going to compromise on that. What about you?
What's the food that gets you going the most?
There are these chocolate bars that I eat that are very low in sugar. They're very low in sugar. So obviously they have to put other things in them to make it semi-sweet. And there's something about those chocolate bars that I eat, man. It's just... I don't know. And it's baked beans, classic, and also cabbage, which I'm a huge fan of as well. So when I do those three, my body creates the most toxic cocktail you've ever experienced.
Okay. Yep. Mine is Sichuan, hot pot. I think it's the sesame oil. There's something maybe in sesame oil that just...
I get you.
Yeah, gets it going.
Makes sense.
Yeah, awesome.
Okay.
All right.
How many a day though? How many a day within? How many a day per 24-hour period?
I'm not a big flatulence. Yeah, no, more
Really?
just go get the business done in the laboratory. That's my game.
Okay, well, hey, that's your truth.
That's sort of but yeah, I've got. Without throwing somebody that I live with under the bus, that's where the majority of the flatulence in our house happens. Yeah, now I definitely have to delete this, otherwise I'm going to get a heap of trouble. No, she wears them like a badge of honor, though. Like most people that know Chantal would know that.
I'm telling you, that's why
she loves nothing more than a loud fart. So
I think it's hilarious. So there you go.
I guess I've got to be more responsible in our relationship. Like we can't have both of us just constantly. What was that? What was that cartoon? South Park. And what are the two guys that would just sit there farting all the time? Like
Terrence and yeah. Just, and they just laugh. I know that.
and the leg would just fly up. We apologize to our listeners for that.
Sorry about the last 5 minutes of talking about farts, but let's keep moving forward, Ali.
We owe you 5 minutes of better content.
Hey, it's a chin wag. It's a chin wag. Come on.
Yeah.
All right, real question.
Is, do you have any social or political issues that you're passionate about?
Oh.
Because we don't really talk about politics and too many social issues. And I thought this was quite a good question.
Okay, so I guess you're asking me first, right?
Yeah.
First of all, I rarely read the news. Mm-hmm. So I don't go to news.com. I just don't look at the news very often at all. Just because when I do, it's, we hear this all the time. There's so much negativity on the news. And the other day, I've got a few friends who look up the news religiously. They look it up 10 times a day. It's like their form of social media. They don't have Facebook. They don't have Instagram. However, they check the news 10 times a day. And every time I see them, they're like, oh, did you hear on the news? This little boy got lost and they can't. And I'm just like, oh, man, it's not that I want to turn a blind eye, but it just makes me feel terrible. I just feel terrible. So I don't follow the news much. And as a result of that, I'm not really plugged in sometimes into what's happening around the world. But there is one thing that I'm quite passionate about, which I don't speak about publicly. I kind of do this work in my own private and personal time, but I don't talk about it publicly, is that I am really passionate about talking to my own Vietnamese community about how we can give back to the Australian community. And one of the reasons I'm really passionate about this is because I've been able, and my family, we've been able to build such a wonderful life here in Australia. And in Vietnamese, there's a beautiful quote where in Vietnamese it's lúc ăn quả nhớ kẻ trồng cây. And what that means is when you eat the fruit, remember those who help you plant the tree. And my dad kind of always talked about this quote over and over and over again growing up. You're eating this beautiful fruit. Remember those who help you plant this tree. So as I grow up, I realize that there's a bit of a stigma when people look at refugees, that sometimes people can, not all people, but some people can look at refugees and go, oh, they come into our country and, they use up our resources and all, those negative kind of thoughts. And to me, those thoughts exist because part of it is true. Some people do that. And some people do that only because they don't have better leaders in the community that tell them otherwise. So I try to inspire my community that, now that we've been able to live here for a couple of generations, let's start thinking about how we can give back to our country. And then ultimately the bigger picture of it is we can start to change the way that people view refugees. We can kind of eliminate that stigma almost, so that we can keep people's minds open, their hearts open. So in the future, when there are other refugees that want to come and need help, we'll be more open-minded about it. And I feel that the refugees who currently are in Australia or wherever else in the world, the ones that are already in, we have such a huge responsibility to be able to try to give back and change the way people see refugees overall. So the current refugees, now we have the ability to open the minds and keep the hearts of those in the future open. We can keep their hearts open for those who need help. So that's one thing I'm fairly passionate about, and I do a lot of that in my personal time.
That's beautiful. I know, and we've spoken about this a few times. I think it's such a unique lens on the migrant and the refugee story too, because it's true, right? Like when you are off a ethnic group, a lot of the times we stick together, and sometimes that, call it assimilation into the cultures that we migrate to, it doesn't happen. And that's for a number of reasons as well. But it's very easy sometimes just to point the finger and be like, my culture isn't being appreciated. We're not getting the opportunities. Whereas it's such a unique way that you're looking at it from the other side of the lens as well. Now that we are a generation in, or two generation in, like, what can we now do for the wider community to build that bridge a little bit more? Which, it's so cool.
I want to be clear as well. I know the amount of value that a refugee community or a migrant community can add to a country. I mean, look at all the beautiful food that the Vietnamese culture, for example, has been able to bring to Australia. So I'm not blind to all the wonderful things that migrants can bring to a country. I mean, I see all of it. It's just that I want to look at both sides, because I still know there's that bit of that stigma that still exists. And it's there for a reason. You know, maybe it isn't completely true. You know, the classic one that you hear, I remember growing up and experiencing a bit of racism. People will not often say, "Oh, you're taking all our jobs." You know what I mean? And a lot of the times, you know, that's a scarce mentality. Whereas if we want people to have an abundant mentality, we first have to be the ones that become more abundant. And I know so many migrant entrepreneurs that have become so successful now. And it's easy sometimes to just focus on our own success and forget about this country we call home. And I feel that every time I have this conversation with my community, and I did a talk there earlier this year for the Vietnamese community, and it was amazing to see how many people want to find projects around the place to better help make Australia better. And I think that's beautiful, right? When you eat the fruit, remember those who help you plant the tree. It's just a powerful lesson to remember.
It's really cool. And I love that.
How about you? Do you have anything that you're kind of passionate about? And
yeah, I think with mine, I'm pretty neutral. Like, I think there's such a risk in attaching yourself to any type of ideologies. You know, that's just my own personal view. It's just never been something that I've done. You know, some people are like, oh, I'm like hard left or hard right, or I'm a Democrat, I'm a liberal, I'm you know, in Australia we have Labor and Liberal. Like, to me, I think that there's such an importance in being compassionate and just being open-minded to everything that's potentially happening. Like, it feels very difficult to just have to just label something as good or bad. Like, obviously there are some things that are preferable versus not, depending on your value system. And but yeah, it's just not something that I really attach to. Hence why, even with a lot of the stuff that I do, I generally don't get too deeply involved in, especially the political side of that. But then the thing that, again, like you, that I'd be really passionate about, I've always just loved the underdog, right? So and to me, that probably materializes more in being passionate about helping disadvantaged sections or underrepresented sections of society. Because I think that if, you know, not allowing merit to be able to shine through just because you're part of a demographic or a minority, to me, that's something that I'm really passionate about helping to fix and solve. So, and I've done a lot of, you know, work with like homeless youth, for example, with multicultural, and like when I worked in the uni days, we had a program called Hands on Health, which was helping disadvantaged students get into medicine and health programs. So even now when I look at golf, it's about how do you change it up so that younger people can get into it, or underrepresented parts of society can get into the game. So that's probably more what I'm aligned to. Yeah, politically, it is what it is.
Yeah, I'm the same with you on that. It's just, you know, I remember getting upset over silly political things. And I remember my mum was just saying to me, look, I have more impact on you than the Prime Minister of Australia. You know, it's yeah, look, I understand, but I think maybe that's something I don't understand enough of. That's why I you know, I don't really listen to much of it, and hence why I kind of stay out of it, really.
And the only thing is, like, say with politics, and we've spoken about this a lot, I think inspiring storytelling and just compassion are probably a really good foundation. Like, if I am going to read anything political, that's probably what I would lean towards. So, whereas the more cutthroat style of politics, I just don't really find it or the more alienating style of politics. But I guess that happens regardless of what side of the fence you sit on. So yeah, tough one to answer this question. Yeah. I think it's like those topics, right? Like politics, religion, you generally just avoid them. But yeah, it was cool. All right.
Okay. All right. Well, I've got one. And this one is, I'll read it out. You both speak about your partners often. How did your partner support you on your journey? Do you have any stories to share? This is an interesting one, because the entrepreneurial path is filled with uncertainty and ups and downs, and it's...
Yep. Oops. It's that time of the episode where we lose Vin to his internet. Hopefully he'll jump back in a couple of seconds, but I'll answer that question first just because he's asked it. So how have our partners supported us throughout this journey? So when I look back at my journey, yeah, I can't commend my partner Chantal, my wife, more for the support that I've been given. She's pretty much since we were younger, because when we first met, I was 19, she was 21, and we really didn't have anything. We came from very modest families. We were both starting out our journey. We were, working part-time jobs. We were going through university. So we started off not really having anything as a foundation. So I guess for us, that we really did build our life together. And we've always had a core value of trying to make each other the best version of who we can be. So whether that was my wife going through a career becoming an educator as a teacher, or it was me working in higher education, or it was then going down the entrepreneurial path, generally our rule of thumb has been like, all right, well, if you're really passionate about this, or this is a dream of yours, or this is something that you want to do, we'll usually come together and try to help each other out as much as possible. Welcome back, Vin. So I'm just answering the question since you got out most of the question there. I was just saying that, we've generally supported each other with those dreams as much as we can, while making sure that it doesn't impact the family unit too much. And of course, there's times where we have to make compromises. Like I know there's definitely been times throughout our journey where we've prioritized my work, for example, and things that I've wanted to do. And then Chantal's prioritized the family and building up our awesome little family unit. But because we are quite different as individuals as well, the ability to kind of divide and conquer and not step on each other's toes has probably also been pretty good too, because we're not fighting for the same thing in terms of like going down the same path. I would say there's a lot of alignment in terms of our values and what we believe in, but in terms of how we operate, our personality types and what we do, we're actually quite different. So I think that's helped us with being able to support each other in what we do. In saying that though, I think definitely the entrepreneurial journey and the start of that, just because we did have a young family at that time, that probably resulted in me going pretty hard at something, even though I knew that there was a pretty big trade-off in terms of how it would impact the family, especially when I was balancing full-time work with starting a business, young family, doing all those bits. I think that was a period of my life where the cups were very, very full, and a lot of the time some of those cups would get neglected, and that was sometimes the relationship. So again, it's a learning experience. You keep adapting, but that is, the support has been awesome.
I love this question because sometimes our partners can get lost in the story, right? Because so much of what I've achieved, I genuinely do credit a lot of it to Pei Wen, because having that support person is so critical. And while you were sharing your story about Chantal, it just reminded me of early in our relationship. I just remember early in the relationship game, as I was dating people and, boyfriend, girlfriend, I remember in my early relationships, I would pretend to be somebody that I'm not. And I'd pretend to be the person that person wanted me to be. Because I feel that I was fairly socially aware and had fairly decent levels of emotional intelligence. So when I was with a partner, I kind of think to myself, oh, you want me to be that. Okay. And then I pretend to be that to make them happy. And those relationships ended terribly, obviously, as you can imagine. And then when I started to date Pei Wen, I realized the importance of being myself and showing her who I am from the start. And I think that was one of the key reasons why things worked out so well in our relationship. We've been together since 2009, married since 2015. And we're going really strong. And I think one of the reasons why is because we're both not pretending. We're not both pretending to be somebody that we're not. We've been very clear about, look, this is who I am. And I hope you can accept me for me. So I think because of that, we're very aligned, because since 2009, she kind of knows that I'm this crazy entrepreneurial person that does some pretty extravagant things. And she knows what she was getting herself into. But there's one story that I remember that I'll never forget. And it was when we've been dating for about a year. And I asked her to move out with me. I'm quite spontaneous like that. And I was like, look, let's just move in together. I love you and I love where this relationship is going. And then just as we moved out together, the business that I was running just started to tank more and more and more and more and more. And I remember this one night laying in bed with her, I got super emotional. I was crying and, the business is failing. I felt like an absolute loser and my credit card debt was just piling up. And I remember saying to her, please believe in me. I know that I have it. I have what it takes to be successful, but I need you to believe in me. I need your support. And it was a very vulnerable moment for me because I was asking her to help me not only emotionally, but financially as well. And we're both laying in bed. We're both, emotional. She was more held together than I was. And I remember her the very next day, she pays off my whole credit card. And she says to me, I want you to keep doing what you love, because when you do what you love, you are the man that I love when you get to do what you love. I love who you are when you're doing what you love. And she paid off my credit card for me twice. And she paid for the bloody mortgage, and she paid for the place we were living at, paid for the bills. And she never made me feel, she never made me feel like I was a burden. She never made me feel like I was a loser. She genuinely believed in me and supported me in so many different ways, man. And I'll never forget that. That's one of the reasons why in the last episode for our podcast, I said to you, I planned this extravagant engagement party. And I was being so crazy about it, flying all her friends from overseas over, her parents, her family, because she deserved it.
Because she paid for it. It was on a credit card.
Because that's the third time she paid off my credit card when I spent that on her yeah, that's exactly right.
That's such a beautiful. I had to throw in a gag. That was just too beautiful. Otherwise, it needed.
Yeah, we had to kind of tone it down a bit.
Yeah.
But dude, it's why my love for her is so deep, right? And I've never had anybody believe in me like that before, and put their money where their mouth was, and it was just I'll never forget that moment. It was just such a low moment in my life, and then seeing her support me in the way that she did meant the world to me. I'll never forget that.
It's so interesting when you speak about belief and how important that is. Like, it could be one of the most underrated components of, call it, quotation mark success, is like, even when I look back, like how important it was for my mum to believe in me, even though there wasn't much writing on the wall that warranted that belief, or to have friends that believed in you even when you're about to get expelled from school, or to have that one teacher believe in you when your back's against the wall. Like those moments, like how much do we remember them when we look back on our life, where that person really backed us in when everything logical suggested that you probably shouldn't. And I think it's the same for me with Chantal. Like, she had a lot of better options on the table when we were early on in our relationship. But yeah, it was similar. Like, there was like this, there wasn't much, that would have suggested that I would have made for a good long-term partner at that point in time. Whereas I think that also then became a driver, is where you don't want to then let that person down throughout that journey. But yeah, the support and the success is pretty critical. It makes an uncertain journey even more difficult when you don't have at least a few people in your corner. And I think you talk about this a lot with your top 5 approach is, look, sometimes maybe your partner might not be in a position to be able to support you, but if you can find others who can, that's also equally as important.
Well, I mean, we've read in so many books where it says that the person you marry is the most important person in your life.
Yeah.
It's a life partnership. I mean, let's face it, that's what it is. And I mean, speaking quite frankly, I know people who have, from what I can see, and this is me judging, but they potentially married the wrong person. and they're staying in that relationship through obligation, and now they have children and a house together. But I can see how the other person doesn't believe in that person anymore. Maybe they did at one point, but now it's just this kind of, it's not good, and yeah. And just like you said, I think it's important to realize that if you don't get that belief from your partner, it doesn't have to come just from your partner. Sometimes it's from your parents. Sometimes it's from one of your best mates. Sometimes it's from someone in your community. It can come from many different places, but just having that one person that 100% believes in you. When they say they believe in you, it's not like I believe in you. No, they just, I fully believe you can do this. Like, you can. And when you have that certainty behind, when you have that certainty behind you and someone fully believes in you like that, it gives you a courage to go into battle like nothing else.
Yep. Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, I think the other part with especially longer term relationships, and I don't know if you agree with this or not, but to me it feels like there's evolutions, and it's nearly like a skill that it needs to be developed too. Because, just when you were mentioning that, like, is it, some people marry the wrong person. Like, I wonder if there's another side to that as well, whether was it the wrong person? Like, is it still the right person, but maybe the approach is no longer appropriate?
That's a really good point.
Because I think when you spend a lot of time with anyone for a long period of time, there's going to be friction and there's going to be challenges and there's going to be hurdles. And overcoming those is pretty challenging, whereas a couple of generations ago, people just didn't have the choice for most of it. So they had to try to make it work. Whereas now, especially in the Western world, we have a lot more choice and flexibility. And maybe that's why we see the duration lessen. But I don't know. I think there's something in there as well around continuously reviewing and seeing like, all right, is this now a relationship that's driven by love, or is it a relationship driven by fear, or just obligation? Is there things that we could do to keep optimizing? Like, I know you're really conscious about this. Like, you always do a heap of stuff to keep your relationship fresh and energized and evolving. So there might be something in there. Maybe one day we'll get them both in for an episode, and
that'd be super fun.
Where we could get their side of the story and the true one.
Yeah. They just both come on and go, we want a divorce.
Yeah, it's like, just delete, stop the recording. Oh my God. No, but I get a lot of views if they both ended up in divorce, like by the end of it. That would
that's how you go viral.
That's how we go viral.
No, but I mean, to close out this as well, this kind of question, I think the last thing I want to say to it, and if you have any concluding thoughts, I'd love to hear it too. It's that it's about communication. It's about talking to each other and having the courage to be honest with each other. For so long, one of the biggest, I guess, flaws in my relationship with my wife was that we wanted to be strong for each other. And as a result of thinking to ourselves, I want to be strong for Pei Wen, or Pei Wen wants to be strong for me, one of the flaws in that kind of thinking is you go, well, I'm not going to tell them what I'm going through because I want to be strong for them. I don't want them to worry about me. And then she's thinking the same thing. So I'm thinking, I won't share with her my problems. I'll deal with it. She won't share with me her problems. She'll deal with it. So then what happened is we were one team, but we were divided. We weren't attacking the battles together. And the moment we put down that facade of having to be strong for the other person, and we were starting to be more vulnerable and shared the problems, now we were able to go to battle and go to war together. And we were so much stronger going to battle together. Simple example is that I remember when I did the keto diet and I did it by myself. It was an awful experience. I was terrible at it. I didn't get good results. This time we both shared with each other, hey, we both want to lose a little bit of weight. How about we both do keto together? We're on like the 5th week of doing it together now. We're both losing a ton of weight. And it just goes, the simple example like weight loss. When we do it together, it's better. Let alone if we do life together, it's better. And that was one of the things that helped us immensely in our relationship was, hey, let's just be honest with each other. What do you need help with? What are you going through that's really hard right now? I don't have to be strong for you. You don't have to be strong for me. Let's just be strong together.
I like that. I'll give you online course, a little bit of a plug as well. But I know just from the stuff that you've done and from the workshops that I've attended of yours, I remember, and this was pretty early on before we were even that tight. Like I remember even from the first workshop after doing it, it was always calling up Chantal and then having some plan to improve the relationship. And I think that point around improving communication to improve relationships is something that's so important. And I know that's not the ultimate goal of what you teach. A lot of it's around public speaking and all of that. But yeah, I think there's probably a lot of people who have had impacts on their relationships as well from learning those same skills.
Communication is everything in life. I mean, you communicate at work, you communicate at home, you communicate when you're with your friends, you communicate when you're with your kids. It's a foundational skill. And I think for too long it has been looked at as being soft skills, but really it's essential skills. I think it's essential in life. All right. Do you have another question? This is fun.
Another question.
I like this because it's allowing us to talk about topics we wouldn't normally talk about. This is really cool.
We'll go with this one. What's one quality in each other that you wish you had and why?
Oh, this is obviously in each other, me and you.
Yeah.
The one I really want from you is your ability to detach yourself from outcomes, especially in business. I think that's really cool. You have this ability to detach from things and you're able to keep a state of calm like no one in my network can do. You're the one person that I very jealous of, that you're able to just detach from things. I feel that when I set myself a goal, especially if it's in the realm of business, I'm very attached to it. And if I don't hit it or get somewhat close to it, I get really bummed out.
Cool.
Yeah.
Mine for you, there's obviously a lot.
And just to clarify for you, there's only one. So
yeah, there's only one.
There's only one that I really wanted.
I've only got one as well. I was just trying to be kind.
You said a lot, so too bad.
Yeah, I know. I was trying to take the high road. The one that I've always really admired in you is your ability to master things. Like, I have not seen anyone be able to attain such a level of mastery at so many different things. If, some people like, oh, I'm going to go do this thing and I'm going to become pretty good at it. And you sort of roll your eyes and you're like, oh yeah, sure. Like we'll wait and see how long this thing lasts for. You are the complete opposite to that. And you're probably the only person that I've met that will, if you say that I'm going to go do something, my first question is like, how far are you going to go down this path? Because it could be pretty extreme, but it's so cool to watch that, to see how you actually break something down and then also to see what level somebody could go. We discussed the book Can't Hurt Me, and that was from a physical standpoint. I think you kind of embody that from, call it a mastery or mental standpoint. Like you're able to use your mind and the way the skills that you've got to really distill and break down a skill, to understand the core of it and then to master it very quickly and at a really good level. So that's something that I think is very cool.
It's very lovely of you. And I guess I can roll into that with something I asked Pei Wen, because I asked Pei Wen, do you have any questions for us, Pei Wen?
Yeah.
And she had a half statement and half question. And this is how
Chantal was like, can I just give statements or do I need to ask questions? And I'm like, is this more feedback or opinions or?
Well, this is how you know this is how you know this is from Pei Wen. This is how it starts, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Some of you might know how much of an idiot Vin is. And recently,
this is a letter.
Recently, Vin's been into archery, and he thinks he's so good that one day he'll be able to join the Olympics. It's true. It's true. I have mentioned that before. So she goes, so the question that I have for Ali is, Ali, do you think you're good enough at golf to one day join the PGA?
That's so hilarious. So when I first started playing golf, this is quite a funny story. I took up the game really late. I was like 20, 21. And we went and played a relatively easy course, which is a local course. And sometimes in golf, like things just happen and you have a really good round. So I went and played, and this was one of the first few rounds of golf that I played, and I shot like a 77 in golf, which is about 5-6 over par at a very easy course. So after this round, I'm like, holy crap, maybe I'm a natural talent at this sport. Like, I need to now review a lot of my life choices. and we went out that night. We had a friend's birthday, and it was late in the night. I had a few too many drinks, and we were on the car ride home, and I started talking to a couple of my mates, and I'm like, boys, I think I'm going to give this a proper crack. Like, I'm going to try to figure out, like, after I finish uni, like, go and give golf a real red hot shot. And they just started like pissing themselves laughing. You know, they're like, they could see that I was being partially serious here.
Oh,
and
God.
I got like emotionally upset, because I'm like, what, you guys don't believe in this? Like, what's going on? Like, I've always got your back, guys. Like, why don't you have it? They're like, dude, can you hear yourself? Like, what you're saying here? This is the most ridiculous thing ever. And I just remember that. And then like the next day I woke up, I'm like, yeah, that's stupid. Like, there's no way that I'm going to become a pro golfer. I'm never going to train hard enough. I don't have any of the natural abilities to do so. But what I do think that happened out of that is I think it then fueled the desire to somehow simulate or want to get into the sport, you know, and nearly get a similar type of experience. And to me, that was like, can we get a set of golf clubs? Can we go and play some good golf courses? And I think that's what, like, one of the hidden reasons behind Future Golf was my failed 1 minute dream to become a golfer. So yes, tell Pei Wen I'm also as delusional as you are. but then you can somehow mix in reality with delusion at some point. It's fine.
But the thing is, you very quickly realized that it wasn't possible and kind of gave up on that dream. I still believe it's possible for me to be in the Olympics.
Well, why not?
I genuinely do. I mean, I just feel like, even though when I got the video back from the, Jake Kaminsky, the silver medalist, and big shout out to you, Jake. I love your content and I love your coaching. And it's just, I believe that if I put my mind to this, it's possible.
I feel like for you, it probably is. For me, it wasn't. I wasn't going to commit to it. And I was too late. And I don't know, like, because you've then got to factor these things in, right? Like, let's break this down a little bit more. Like, how many people, and this is where I don't know much about archery, like, say in golf, I was potentially, like, if I wanted to go down that dream, the amount of people that are competing for that dream is a lot. Like, there's millions of professional golfers in the world.
Definitely.
That are at the level. And then there's thousands that are at like the tour player level. And I would say 90, there's probably not a single story of a golfer making it after starting the game past the age of 13 or 14. So statistically, those odds were against me. Whereas with archery, I don't know if those conditions exist. Like,
well, there's definitely not as many people.
Yeah.
Definitely not as many people into the art of archery as compared to golf. That's for sure. And also, man, like, I've worked out that you can pay your way into a lot of archery competitions. And, so for me, I could even go to Vegas and compete in one of the most...
Pei Wen, we need that credit card again.
Yeah, she's just my sugar mama. That's all that it is. But I like what you said, in that... I think far too often, some people don't even give themselves an opportunity to dream up something like that. Whether or not I can get into the Olympics or not, I like having those aspirational goals. And it's cool to know that you're the same too, even though it's momentary.
Yep. Well, this is the thing, right? If I was serious about that goal, I would have gone about it, like, I would have dedicated at least a year to it, which means that I would have gone and played golf full time for a year. Even at that age, I would have taken a risk. I would have tried to have gotten funding, maybe off the back of this story, like 21-year-old has a dream to become a pro golfer, see if I could have found a sponsor. And I would have actually tried to execute that dream and then waited up maybe in a year or so. So I think we're very quickly to just poo-poo a dream before it gets anywhere. And... yeah, like, if it was a different time and if my mindset was different at that point as well, like, probably my mates laughing at me and then having the realization that if I spoke to 9 out of 10 people, they would say it was stupid, which the odds are very low. But I think if you're going to go in and do anything that's got a very low chance of success. 99% of people will tell you that you're taking a risk and it's stupid. So it just depends on how you're programmed. Like
There's
if
something
you
about that as
genuinely
well.
said that you want to be an Olympic archer, I don't, like, as weird as this sounds, without knowing what's involved, I don't think it's that ridiculous. Like, I'm probably your one friend that's sitting there backing you in on it and being like, all right, let's make a plan.
The longer this friendship goes on, I feel like I probably should have married you.
No, it wouldn't have worked.
Yeah, it probably wouldn't have worked. Yeah.
You fart too much.
Oh, well, okay. Well, you married someone who farts a lot anyway, so I think
that's true, actually. It probably can work.
Mate. Yeah, exactly.
We picked the wrong people. Imagine that on an episode we actually get married. Now that would
man, you know what's funny? Yeah. I went to Vegas for one of my best mates, Bucks and Lenny. So we went to Vegas for Lenny's Bucks, and we had friends from all over the world join us for a Bucks in Vegas. And then on one night we were, let's just say, a little bit drunk. We almost decided, and I don't drink. There were other things involved. And what happened was we almost went to a chapel, Lenny and I, and got married in Vegas. We were this close to getting married because we walked there, we got there, and then the chapel was closed. If it was open that night, it would have created so many complications for me because I would have been legally married to Lenny in America.
Prior to his wedding.
Prior to his wedding. Oh, it was so bad, man. It was so close to being one of the worst decisions we've made.
It would have been an awesome best man speech because it'd be like, well, now Lenny's best man / husband, Vin's going to come up and do the wedding speech.
And they're going to do the first dance together. Oh, gosh. Anyway.
That's brilliant.
Well,
so good.
Thank you for that. Thank you for answering that. And I'm glad you believe in me so much. Thank you, Ali.
Yeah, I've got your back. I just love how Pei Wen phrased that question as well. That's brilliant.
Oh, I took it down word for word. So there you go.
It's so good. So good.
All right, your turn.
What's something people misunderstand about you?
Ooh, gosh, what's something people misunderstand about me? Okay. I think that the most common misconception people have with me is that I'm always extremely positive. I think it's very easy because of the way I communicate. People can make that assumption. I feel that I'm not 100% of the times extremely positive, but I'm 90% of the time extremely positive.
Yeah, I'd say it's about.
I do
it's
have
pretty
moments
close.
where it's pretty close, but I do have downtime that I really need. I love connecting with people. I guess a better way for me to phrase this is that I think people make the assumption that I'm fully an extrovert. I have learned that my career, maybe I initially started as an extrovert, but my career has now made me mostly introvert. I actually really enjoy time on my own. And I don't even know if it's possible to be an extrovert and then convert to an introvert, but I now enjoy time on my own where I'm sitting in the morning for hours on end just by myself with my thoughts. So that's a big misconception I think people make. It's because, just because I can connect with people very easily and get along with people very easily, and yeah, that creates a misconception that, oh, he's a full-blown extrovert. Actually, no, I think I'm 60% introvert now and 40% extrovert.
Yep. Yeah.
How about you? What's a big misconception people have about you?
Jeez.
That you're a good person?
Yeah, a good human being. No, I don't think anyone has that misconception. I wish they did. I think mine would be that I think the one that I've probably gotten, which I quite like, is generally I'm underestimated. And I think I play to that shtick where even from when I was younger, where I'd paint it out. So I'd reduce the expectations as much as possible. And then I'd try to surprise people on the other side. Right. So that's probably one where, and then I think that can come across as maybe, very laid back at times, or a little bit indifferent or aloof, which there are parts of that, but I think I'm also very focused on certain things, which only get shown later on once you get to know me a little bit more. Like
that's actually, it's actually very true. I think that does happen with you, and it's interesting how you view it as, almost like a strategitic advantage. People underestimate you, and then you can, come from behind and show them how good you actually are.
Yeah, it's a nice bailout tactic, I think.
Well, it's like a wolf in sheep's clothing, right? They think, oh, it's just a little lamb, and then
they pat it, then it bites you in the arm.
Yep, that's it.
Yep.
Okay, hey, that's a really interesting question. I like that one.
Yeah.
All right, I've got another one from Pei Wen here. And this is from Pei Wen. She says, what's your favorite food that your wife makes? And describe it in detail, like a chef would.
Oh,
yeah, there you go.
Oh, God. I'm so bad at describing anything in detail, Pei Wen.
Really? Come on.
All right.
Come on, try.
None of them. And she's a terrible cook, and it's all disgusting. Uber Eats when they deliver it to your door. Yeah, no, Jay. One of my favorite things that she makes is, it's like a spicy fish type of meal. So describing it in detail like a chef would, God.
Come on.
So it's got vegetables, bean shoots, it's got oil, chili oil, chilies, garlic, fish. It's spicy. You put rice in it. Yeah, I've sold it great. But yeah, it's like a version of a Sichuan type of, we go back to Sichuan food. Spicy fish meal. It's yum.
Okay,
yours?
All right. Well, that was...
Here we go. Let's see how the world's best storyteller. I've set a very low bar there.
There's a beautiful soup that Pei Wen makes, and it's a more of a stew, and it's a lotus root with ribs stew. Now this stew, dude, she cooks it in a crock pot, and she boils peanuts and ribs first. So she boils the peanuts and the ribs to start with, and she'll boil that for at least 3 to 4 hours. And I kid you not. So the sweetness from the meat actually comes out into the soup, and then after that, you get the nuts. The beautiful nutty flavor from the peanuts start to really be absorbed and kind of comes out into the meat and into the soup as well. And then she puts lotus roots in. Then she puts dates in to add another level of sweetness. And then it's just, once you taste this soup, I don't know how to describe it, man. It makes me feel so loved. When I taste it, it tastes like love. It genuinely does, because it takes so long to make. I'm going to get
in so much trouble for this now.
It's so difficult to make. And not only this, what Pei Wen has learned from making this soup was that not only do you have to cook it, and then she doesn't let me eat it generally on that same day, because then if you let it sit for a night, the next day when you heat it up, when you taste it the second day, it's like
it gets better with age.
It's like
just like she does. A fine wine.
It becomes so intensified the second day. And not only is all the flavors are intensified, but the meat falls off the bone. And I think it's the cartilage on the ribs. It's so soft that when you put it in your mouth, it melts. And the key to getting this dish right is really in the sauce that she makes with it. And she's crushed it. And it's soy sauce, garlic, and chili, more chili than garlic, but still ample amounts of garlic because I love that. And then as you mix it together, you add a dash of sesame oil with it as well. And then, dude. Oh my God, I'm salivating just thinking about it. Yeah, that dish is unbelievable. And again, it's called lotus root because right at the end, you add the lotus root to it. And then the meat's soft, the cartilage, everything is soft, but then you've got the crunch of the lotus root. It's crunchy. It's not overly done and overly cooked. And that's my favorite dish, and I love it. 5 stars.
Well done. really appreciate the stitch up there as well, because I'm
No
gonna get in
worries.
so much trouble for.
I can't wait to show Peiwen this clip and then show your version.
Yeah, I know. It's
Chili
it's
fish.
so bad. Yeah, chili
The
fish.
oil and chilies in it.
Yeah, and fish.
Yeah, fish.
Don't forget the fish.
Your turn.
All right. I know you've kind of answered this. No. If you could be... all right, we'll go to this one. If you could be remembered for one thing, what would it be?
Oh, if I could be remembered for one thing, what would it be? Oh, this is a big silence for me because there's many things I want to be remembered for, but the one that the one that popped up first for me is I want people to remember me for the fact that I've helped them. Sounds a little bit arrogant, but I want them to go, wow, having Vin in my life has helped me live a more extraordinary life. And I just really want that. I want them to go, because of him, I've lived a life that's a little more exciting. He's pushed me to go on a couple of extra adventures. That's what I want to be remembered for. You know, that he made this story a little bit more exciting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that one. That's good.
What about you?
Mine would be, I think it's ultimately to inspire people to take some action and to make them believe that things are possible. You know, and it probably aligns to the previous, the previous example of, you know, it aligns with my shtick of being unimpressive, but seeing if you can exceed that expectation. I think that there's power in that. Like, so many people just unlocking their potential is such a cool thing if you can play a small role in helping that happen. So that's a big one for me. So probably it's pretty similar to yours. I think it's just a different version.
I'm just obsessed about living an exciting story. And again, it doesn't have to be exciting all the time. That will get exhausting, but it's just little adventures, you know, go on adventures, try new things, and don't be afraid of the what ifs, you know. What if you can go on that
story
trip?
I don't know if you're the same, but I love that, hearing the stories of others when they're like, oh, yeah, and they just share something that they never thought they were going to be able to do. And just that feeling of when they do it. Like, to me, that is just the ultimate thing. Whether it's your kids or friends or listeners or, you know, team members, just seeing people's, like, that look on someone's face when they really surprise themselves by what they've been able to do. And usually it's just overcoming something internal. It's very cool.
Yeah, no, awesome. Awesome answer to that question. All right, now I've got one for you. And it's, what's your go-to music playlist?
I've got a playlist that I've had for about 4 years. And I would say 90% of what I listen to hasn't really changed in that time. So if I look at it, it is, there's only 2 or 3 artists in this playlist. Oh, there's a few more, but the majority of the playlist is 2 to 3 artists. So it's a combination of Humorous, which is an Icelandic sort of ambient rock band. It's Ben Howard, who is an English singer-songwriter. There is some Bon Iver, who is sort of in that similar ilk of singer-songwriter. And yeah, that's probably 80% of the playlist. Then there's just a few like hip-hop songs, a few pop songs that will come in and out just every now and again. A few instrumental songs. I think there was a little time where I had like a couple of Japanese songs in there, and that is it. But yeah, most of the music that I like to listen to is more background music.
That's kind of similar to me as well. I love this YouTube channel. It's called Bloom, Blume. And if you just type into YouTube, Blume instrumentals, so Bloom instrumentals, this YouTube channel has just collected some of the best ambient, atmospheric elven music. I love it. I love kind of that mystical orchestra-esque type music that is it just makes you feel like you're in another world. I love that. And that's the music I always listen to. My go-to music I listen to. I even go on Spotify and just type elven music. I love that kind of music. It really inspires me. So that's my go-to music for you.
I love it. All right. So since we're on the theme of entertainment, call it, and those types of things, what your top 3 books? You're on the desert island. You get to take 3 with you. What are you taking?
We'll do one each as we go through this. So my first one, definitely easy, hands down, no contest, is the Almanac of Naval Ravikant.
Wow, so that's a new one. That's a new one. So that's come straight up to the top. Wow, that's pretty cool.
And if you haven't checked out our podcast that we did for Naval Ravikant's Almanac, check it out. We was a 2-part podcast, but I love that podcast. And when I read that book in preparation for our podcast, I just couldn't believe how many pearls of wisdom was in that book. And I've since got 20 plus copies. I've been giving them to all the people in my family, my network, people that I really care about. Because to me, that book, it's like a guide to wealth creation. It's a guide to happiness. It's a guide to living a more fulfilling life. Far out. It's become my Bible since we've read it on the podcast. That's my number 1.
He's got a really awesome podcast episode with Tim Ferriss as well that I know is always highly.
And Joe Rogan as well. Yeah. I've listened to both.
Just a really cool thinker. Yep, I like that one. My one would be The Alchemist. Would probably be number 1 on the list. I love that book.
It's the first episode ever.
Yeah, it's just I don't know that it's probably the book that I've read the most and reread the most as well, and I get something new out of it every single time. So that would be number 1.
I'm totally going to steal that and say that's my number 2 as well. I love The Alchemist because I don't often read fiction. I just don't. And it's one of the most relatable fiction stories I've ever come across. And when you read it, initially you go, oh, what the hell? This doesn't make sense. But then when you look into it more deeply and you read it, like you said, multiple times, you go, wow, this is actually the story of life. This is the journey we all go on in one shape or form or the other. Like this is just the journey of life. And the wisdom that the book shares every time you read it, like you said, you get something different. So that's got to be my second one too.
Yep, like that. Then the other one that's my probably number 2, and now it's not, and I put this as number 2 just because of the impact that it has had on my life, is the 4-Hour Work Week, I would say. And just when I now look back on it, like at the time I remember reading it being like, yeah, this is a bit of, whatever. But then I also remember reading it being like, wow, this is really aligned to the way that I think and around how to manage time and to make things happen. So to me, as a guidebook for somebody that's looking at going down the entrepreneurial path or wanting to improve their work life, how they manage time, make decisions, to become a little bit more productive and impactful. To me, that book, just as a practical toolkit, is one of the best that I've read so far.
The final one for me, I would say, is 48 Laws of Power. I really like that book because it taught me how to be able to navigate the business world, things to look out for, traps to not fall victim to, or traps to not fall into, and how to deal with other potential players in the business world who can sometimes be a little bit cutthroat. So it's taught me how to protect myself more, and it's taught me how to play strategically in the business world. And there's a lot of wisdom in that book that I would love to study more, because I haven't read that book for, years now. But that one had the most influence on me as I started my entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, that's a good one. Also, that's actually one we should do for an episode one day.
Yeah, full on. But that would be a big episode. I mean, far out.
It's a big book. It's a big reread. I remember reading
it is.
And loving it. But yeah, awesome. And my third, probably, we won't say it's a book, but just because, for the purpose of distilling some of the ones that have had impact, is I'd go Wim Hof. Like just coming across Wim Hof stuff and his breathing techniques and cold showers. Again, just another thing that I'd say over the last 4 or 5 years just had a really big impact on mental state and well-being. I think that's a pretty big one. That probably equaled with the book The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. That's right up there as well, because that was the first time that I realized how much in the future I actually lived. And it started me on the practice of going down into the moment a little bit more.
I think that's a book we need to do a podcast on, because I actually haven't read The Power of Now, and I'd love to do an episode on that, because I think I live too much in the future as well. Still.
Okay.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Well, look, let's take this on a different turn now. We've been answering a lot of questions from our tiny fan base. I mean, actually, I've actually got a couple of questions extra here from our longtime listener, first-time caller, and he's probably our biggest fan, and it's Dan. So hi, big hello to Dan. I know you'll listen to this at some point. So big shout out to Dan Yao. He's my cousin-in-law, but he's basically like my brother. I love this guy. So he's got a few questions. Do you want to throw some at you?
Yeah, all right, let's do it.
Okay. The first one he wants to know is, if you guys had to choose one last meal for one another, what would it be? So a meal that we have to choose for one another. Yeah.
Oh, well, geez, after what you just said about Pei Wen's soup, it'd be pretty harsh not to choose that. Or your or the tomahawk steak that you make would be right up there as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, after hearing the way you describe Chantel's dish, I would love to have you pick an Uber Eats meal for me. That's mine from you. All right, next one. Quick fire. What's the most annoying habit we each have? All right, I'm going to throw one at you straight away. On the podcast, you often say this. You often say you've hit the nail on the head, and you're bang on. And that's the two things you always say whenever I say something. So I think that's really annoying.
Bang on. I've got so many of those little sayings. There's even more. Yeah, that's so bad. All right, done. Your most annoying habit is how you speak and your appearance. No. And your personality, and who you are as as an individual. I don't know. Okay. You're pretty good at you're pretty good at. You don't have many like little tics or anything, so I can't.
No, I do. Dan's made me aware of it. In all the podcasts that I do, what I normally say is I go, well, what I think is, my opinion is, and he says that's my kind of filler.
So you're saying you're a little bit self-righteous.
Self-obsessed. Yeah, self-obsessed.
See, I don't notice. I remember you used to, like years ago, you'd always put your glasses up. That was one that you had, but you got rid of that one. Like that was your habit, but no, mate.
That was my nervous tick.
You're fine. You're fine. Unlike you, I've got no judgy calls. To me, I accept you and embrace you for who you are. Okay, perfectly as a being.
Oh, see, more reasons why I probably should have married you. Now, the next question is, oh wow, there you go. That's interesting. If you had to spend a year on a deserted island and you could take 3 people with you who are currently alive, who would you take and why?
Oh, this is a bad one.
Because you conveniently have 3 members in your family, your 2 kids and your wife. So would you take them or wouldn't you?
I literally can't. Well, I pretty much am on a deserted island right now. We're in lockdown. So they are my 3 people. But yeah, I think this question, we could make it like, it's obviously too easy just to pick family members and stuff.
Yeah, it is.
So let's pick other than each other and direct family members if we had to pick one person. We'll modify his question.
Oh gosh, this is super hard because I would definitely take Craig.
Yeah.
So Craig's my videographer and he does all of my videos. I'll definitely take him because when I'm with Craig, he just makes life more fun and funny and exciting. So definitely would take Craig. Second person, I'd definitely take Lenny, my best mate. And third person I'd probably take my cousin Fung. Yeah, I love my cousin Phil. I love her. I think the three of us will just get super silly and have a damn good time. So I'll take the three of them. How about you?
As you were saying that, I think I just realized I'd probably just go by myself. I'd use it as a really nice holiday. I'll take my phone, some music, and some books, and that would be the thing. I think just
couple of other quick fire ones. Then is how would your parents describe what you do?
That's a great question.
Yeah, I don't think my parents still understand what it is that I do. My parents they're actually over right now, and I had a virtual presentation that I had to give this morning, and like they literally just walked in. They walked in and they were doing the gardening. They're helping me with some of the gardening, and they're like, I'm in the middle of a presentation in my garage. They open the door and they're like, "Hey, which bush do you want us to remove?" I'm like, "Mum, I'm teaching people right now." It's hilarious. People in the chat just laugh their asses off. They just walked into the studio, and yeah, I don't think they know really.
That's hilarious. Yeah, no, yeah. It's so funny. Like, I remember even when I worked at Monash Uni, like I think my mum just thought that I was still at uni, just as a student, like that I wasn't even working there. For at least the first 4 or 5 years at least. It's like, yeah, this is doing some degree at the uni still, because she just figured I was going to the same place for just a very long period of time. Yeah, I don't know how mum would describe what I do nowadays.
That's a really good question. I like it. I'd love to ask my parents and get them to describe it and then one day share it on the podcast, right? Because when my parents describe me to other people, every now and then I've kind of heard it, and to them, it's so funny because they're so reluctant to use the word magician still. I think they still feel a lot of shame with that inside. And so they're like, oh, he talks and he makes people happy and laugh. So I think when people hear it, people are like, wait, is he a comic? A stand-up comic? Like, what does he do? And yeah, I think they have a really hard time describing what I do, so they just avoid it.
Yeah, I think my mum would just be like, he runs a golf business, would probably be the one. It was funny with the kids, like when you have you ever asked Xander what he thinks you do? Has he had the age yet? Because
no, he not really. I think to him, I think he thinks I don't work. I don't work. I've been around a lot more, so I'm always home, and he's probably thinking, "Wow, Dad's unemployed. Dad doesn't work, and he just uses Mum's money."
Well, I remember once, I remember the kids were like having a laugh. It's like, yeah, Dad's like, it's always like Dad's going to be on a meeting. So like, I think they think that like meetings is the job. Or like Dad's on his phone, because I do most of my work, typing on the phone. So it's like that. But now they're like, oh, you do a TV show with Vin. So they think that this is a TV
show. That's so cute.
Yeah, but I think, like one of my chores now at home is to play video games. So I've tricked them into thinking that that's a chore that I need to go and do.
So now they think you're a streamer, an online gaming streamer.
YouTube channel. But no, it's pretty funny.
All right. Well, I've answered enough of Dan's questions, and we have answered enough of Dan's questions. So thank you, Dan, for those. And thank you for being, again, our biggest fan. We really appreciate you. But I want to take this in a slightly different turn for the last, I don't know, say 30 minutes or so that we have together. Mm-hmm. And it's, what's on your mind right now? What are things that you are currently focused on, things you really care about, things you really are trying to strive for? What are those things that consume the majority of your cognitive space right now?
Such a good question.
We'll go one each. And then we'll go until we run out of ideas and then have to end the podcast.
I think one that's been on my mind for the last couple of years, just post-pandemic, is how to unlock and find deeper levels of happiness and contentment in an uncertain world. Like, that's something that I'm very curious about. And I think just subconsciously a lot of my study has gone to that point, especially during lockdowns and outside of that. It's like, all right, well, if there are certain things in the external world that are no longer possible, how can you then design a life that still is as exciting and as enriching and as satisfying during that period. And that's where I think I've personally found that there's a lot of really good lessons in like philosophy, in spirituality, in, you know, that thing that we spoke about earlier in the episode around contentment, around really good well-being types of practices. Like these are like very simple things when you strip a lot of everything else away, to provide you with a different type of operating system, when a lot of, like, call it the thrills, or, you know, even just not even thrills, but just even things like seeing your friends and family are no longer really on the table. How can you then still find internal peace and happiness from that? So I'd say peace, happiness is one that's right up there.
Do you have any insights you can share that you've found to be really useful?
Yeah, for sure. I think perspective is very, very important in terms of finding gratitude and appreciation of what's still in play. Like, sometimes it's so easy to start listing off 10 or 20 things that you can't do. Now, this doesn't even matter whether you're in lockdown or not. It can be in any part of life. But just reshaping that and being like, oh, well, you know, it can be something as simple as just listening to a bird tweet or seeing a cloud pass by. You know, a smile of a little one, or just those things, and trying to really start appreciating and zoning in on that. And to me, that feels a lot like a skill and a practice, you know, is finding, call it beauty and enjoyment in what it is that you do have, you know, whether it's a meal, whether it's being in a position where you can still, you know, live in your house. Like, I think appreciation lists, like even when I find myself journaling, a lot of it goes back to that. And I find that most of the time during this period, it's either we view it from a point of lack and nearly fear and urgency and scarcity, where it's like, oh crap, it's like, need to make 50 different moves to fix this thing and to solve it, is one side. And then the other side of that is just being really in the zone, like slow breathing, going for a walk, meditating, being present, being really grateful and appreciative of everything that is in play. And I think that seesaw happens a little bit more in uncertain times, versus not. So to me, there's a practice in that of being content or present, or whatever you want to call it.
Well, that gratitude thing is something that, you know, you hear a lot of people talk about, and it's something I've been doing now for 3 months, and absolutely, man, it's you. When you only think about gratitude, when you think about gratitude maybe once a month or once every 2 weeks or once a week, you always go back to the same gratitude list. Oh, I'm grateful for my family. I'm grateful for my health. And you keep kind of just using the same list over and over again. But when you're writing it down and you have to try to come up with 3 or 4 every day, what happens is you start to broaden the lens of what you can see that you're grateful for. And then it makes you feel more abundant, because you're thinking, wow, I'm grateful for my backyard. You know, I'm grateful for that patch of real grass, because every time I cut it, I love the smell of the freshly cut lawn. And then you feel abundant, because it increases your field of view. Whereas if you keep saying, oh, I'm grateful for family, oh, I'm grateful for this, then you forget about all the other things that you could be grateful for. And there's so much that exists all around us. So I really agree with you, and just wanted to add that as well. Try to come up with a more creative list, because then you realize you're richer than you actually are.
And even as the next follow-up on that, it's like, once you're grateful for the things that you do have, I think the next part that I found really powerful is then letting go, and doing nearly a letting go practice of what you're attached to. Because that seems to have power in it as well. When you can start viewing all the things that are external, like if you're really attached to your job or your business, or things that you can control, influence to an extent, but sometimes you can't. That can also get you into a questionable, you know, mind space around, at some point. And I think letting go also lets you plant new seeds and to allow it to flourish a little bit more as well. So that's just been another one. And so a lot of the books that I've been reading have been aligned to that as well.
Oh, okay. Well, that's one of the things you've been doing. One of the things that's consuming up my mind is I want to stop being the person who is the hero, is the person who fixes everything for everybody. I've been so addicted to that, and that's been a huge part of my identity. And I remember something that Pei Wen said to me as well, and I'll never forget this. And it's what kind of made me want to change the way that I am slightly. And it's that she goes, stop trying to pull me out of the dark. Sometimes I just want you to sit in the dark with me. And for me, I like living in the light. I like, again, like you've heard in this podcast, I enjoy being in the light or being optimistic 90% of the time. Whereas I've learned that people don't always want you to save them. People don't always want you to come in and just pull them out and give them the solution. Whereas I'm very quick to do that because I make the assumption that people don't want to sit in the dark. But sometimes people just want company while they're in the dark for a moment, and they want to feel what they feel. And for me, it's sometimes I've got to learn that it's okay to actually feel sad. It's okay to not be happy for a moment of time. And that's something I'm really trying to work on. So when people around me share with me some bad news or some hard times that they're going through, I'm just learning how to sit there with them. Not offer any advice, not share any thoughts, but just kind of go, yeah, actually, that really sucks. And I've been doing that more for the last 6 weeks, and far out, it's made me feel terrible. No, I'm kidding. It's what's great about it is it just
even they're also feeling the same. They're like, "Nah, Vin, I actually really wanted you to help me out with solving this thing." And you're just sitting there in silence and not offering any value or advice right now, or money, which is what I really wanted.
You know what's, all jokes aside, you know what's actually really powerful in doing this? What's really powerful in doing this is, as I've been able to, let's just go with the metaphor, sit in the dark with those around me and not be the hero. What's been really powerful is that they have pulled themselves out of the dark. They've been able to be their own hero. Generally, the people in my life who come to me with a problem, they already know what they need to do. I don't need to give them the solution. And when I just sit with them, they find their own way out. And there was a situation that I was going through in my personal life where both Pei Wen and I were both in the dark, and it was an awful situation for us. And by me not being the hero and trying to pull us out of the dark, she pulled us out of that really shitty situation. She was the one that pulled me out, and I was so proud of her. I was like, wow, it's amazing what happens when you always try to do things for other people. Sometimes you stunt other people's growth without realizing it. Sometimes when you just give people the formula, you give people the solution straight away, you stunt the growth of those around you. And Pei Wen was able to pull me out of a rut that I was in, that we were in, better than I could have done. And that's when I learned this lesson and started to think to myself, wow, you know what, mate? You don't always have to be the hero, not only because, sometimes you're not the best hero for the situation, but also let others around you have a turn at solving problems and being able to be the hero. So that's a big one that I've been working on. Yeah.
I like that. And you're right. It's so natural when people tell us their situations just to start shooting out 50 different solutions. And a lot of the time, people don't want that. Just want a comforting ear. Yeah, I like that. It's a really cool one.
Any other things for you that you're focusing on or spending a lot of time on?
So many. Always curious about a variety of different things. I think one that we've touched on a lot in the podcast, and this is probably one for you as well, is the concept of play and just not being as serious, taking things as serious. I think that's been a really big one. And it's just something huge that I've taken away from our podcast episodes, just even as a listener, which is quite funny given that we're in it. But I think both of us have really been focusing a lot on play and happiness at this point. You talk about this being a time capsule of where we're at in our lives.
Yeah.
Feels like that's been a theme, at least for the last 6 to 12 months, is finding enjoyment and joy, fun in things.
I'm not sure if you can hear Xander just kind of screaming in the background. Can you hear him?
No.
Oh, you didn't hear it? Are you just running around going, ah, running around just playing? And I really love that this is a time capsule because, if I've got a message for Xander and Romeo and Marcel here, and to maybe future children for you or future children for me, is that just remember that you're not what you do. You are more than just your profession. You are more than just what you do for work. And don't become so attached to what you do that you think that's all you are. So if you become an accountant or you become a doctor or you become an electrician, whatever it is that you want to become, remember that you're a multifaceted person. There's so many dimensions to who you are as an individual, and it's so easy to get so attached to just your work and what you do professionally that you fall into the trap of thinking that's all I am. I am an electrician. I am a plumber. I am a doctor. And that's something that I fell into. I only had an identity professionally. And when I had time that was spare outside of that, I didn't know who I was. And only in the last 2 years have I started to discover who I am outside of work. And for once in my life, I feel more in love with my life personally than I am in love with my life professionally. And it's a place that I've never really been before, because I used to love what I do so much. And then there's a trap in that as well. I mean, so many people want to do what they love. And what I think people don't realize as well is that is a trap in itself, because I didn't have an identity outside of that. I didn't have a personal life. Whereas now I'm so in love with setting up this new trip we're doing at the end of this month, where we're going to be traveling around, going camping for a whole week, and I can't wait to apply the new lessons I've learned for archery. And, I can't wait tomorrow to slow cook ribs on the barbecue and smoke it. It's a really nice place. And I hope that for our kids that they can keep a nice balance early on in life as well, and not go too hard just on the professional self and forget about your personal self and who you are.
Side question off the back of that just came to mind there. Like, you're obviously, when did you move back to Australia now? Has it been around a year?
Over a year. Over a year.
August,
September. A year and 3 months now.
So when you now, like, how have you adjusted now when you reflect on it a year in? Because I know previously, like, you obviously moved back from the US, you've come back to Australia, you were living a very different lifestyle over there as well, where, like, if you could provide more context, but it's more like being a musician or a rock star on tour, kind of, right? Like, you've got a lot of days on the road, you're away from the family, but you're also performing, and you're performing in front of big crowds, and you're getting the buzz from that. How have you found that shift, like, a year on in, and the transition?
I miss it.
Yeah.
I miss parts of it.
Yeah.
Human connection. I think that's something we all miss at this point. And I know that you're in lockdown in Melbourne, but I really miss the human connection. I mean, the time off from it has taught me to be able to discover other aspects of who I am, that I do have a personal life. And when you're locked down, you very quickly realize whether you have a personal life or not. But now that we're a year or 2 years into this whole pandemic, I've now got a very clear idea of what I want. So before that rock star life you're talking about, it was true. I was on the road 180 days a year. I was away half of the year. So that was too much. 100 days was definitely too much. But then 0 days away is definitely too little. And to me, the sweet spot that I really feel for me personally is I want to travel once or twice a month. I want to be able to speak to a live audience once or twice a month. Instead of doing 80 or 90 speaking engagements a year, I want to do more like 20. I want to do 20 events a year, maybe even 15. I want to not travel as much and be on the road as much, but I still want to travel and be on the road, because when I'm away, I get to, be away from the family, get an opportunity to miss them. But then also I get my own private time. I love being on the plane. I love being able to just read whatever book I want, listen to whatever music I want. There's an art to travel that I really appreciate. And then I love connecting with people in an audience. I love performing on stage. And this pandemic, I went through periods where I thought, I never want to do speaking again. But that was just a reaction to doing too much of it. Whereas having time and space away from it now, I realized, it's really a balanced approach is what I want. And I think it's made me more aware of my addiction to the things that I like. And when I like something, I'll do it so much that I will get sick of it. When I like to eat something, I'll eat it so much that I'll get sick from eating it. So to me, it's made me aware of one of my flaws, that once I like something, I kind of cause myself not to like it because I overdo it.
It's cool awareness. Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this was a cool episode in that it allowed us to talk about many different things that we normally don't talk about. I guess in closing out this episode, is there anything else that's on your mind is there anything you need help with? Is the question I'd like to end on, and we both can answer this. Is there anything you need help with?
That's a really good question. I'm sure, yeah, of course, there's always things you need help with. I think the biggest one that I'm now looking for at the moment is kind of designing the next chapter of this life. Like if I look at, say, the last 7 years, I was on a journey to essentially validate some of the things that I wanted to validate, whether it was, as an entrepreneur, as a parent, all of those bits and pieces. And now the kids are getting to an age, like I'm looking at the world and the new world that we're about to probably enter, or that we're entering at the moment. So I'm looking for just that sort of design and like that inspiration around, okay, now what does the next 5 to 10 years look like? And what do I want to then really focus my energies on, and who are the people that I want to bring in on that journey as well? So that's probably something that what are new skill sets, new things that I want to learn about, and who can help me learn about those. So if I just even think about things like, over the last 4 years or so, like blockchain and crypto has been something interesting. Is that something that I want to explore more? Things like what we're doing here, like thought leadership. Is that something to explore more and to refine those skills? Or is it contentment, and maybe even going down a different path a little bit more? So they're just things that I'm looking at, but then, bringing in, like refreshing that circle of knowledge and people to then help me with developing those areas and figuring out and getting a lot more clarity around what those areas are going to be is probably the big one. What about you?
Thanks for sharing that, Ali. I mean, when I think about it, for me, I need help with, I feel that I find it hard to write the next chapter without having too much influence from the previous chapter. Like you, I feel like I want to be able to write a chapter in the future that has nothing to do with any previous chapters in my life.
Fresh one.
Like a fresh one, like a completely fresh, completely out there, completely different. I don't want my story to be so predictable. I don't find that fun. I don't find that inspiring. I want to do a complete pivot, if you would, at some point. And I want to have the ability to detach from the previous chapters and write a completely new chapter that everyone's like, what the frick are you doing, man? I like that. To me, that is exciting. That is thrilling.
Olympic gold medalist in archery, Giang.
Just to bring that back. But I want help with that. I wonder, if there's anyone who listens to our podcast that has completely written a chapter that has nothing to do with the previous chapter. I want help with that.
There's something so cool. And I actually had that as a question written down. Like if you could reinvent yourself.
Yeah.
Right. So you don't
nothing to do with the previous chapters, right?
So no. So you're still your same age, but you've just had a really bad head injury. You've forgotten every single thing from your past life, and you've woken up in a different location.
I know the answer to this already.
And you start again. What are you doing?
Chef.
Ooh.
Yeah. I'd be a chef.
Yeah.
It's funny. I said I need help with it, but then you asked me the question and phrased it in the most perfect way, and I know the answer already. It's a chef.
Really?
I would get into cooking.
Chef suits your brain so well too.
I'd get into cooking. Dude, omasake, right? Which is a way to eat sushi where the chef cooks for you dish by dish, like, piece of sushi by piece of sushi. And towards the end of my time in the US, when I was traveling to New York, Chicago, Seattle, any city I went, I'd find a Japanese restaurant, I'd treat myself, I'd go out by myself, and I'd get omasake, right? And that's when I fully fell in love with cooking, because I couldn't believe how much of an art form cooking was. I mean, I just thought it was just make something really yummy. Who cares how it looks? And then just nom, 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 nom. But I would be a chef. I would fully get into that. And I'm just going to, I'm going to remember this because that's my chapter that I would love to write one day. How about you?
I think I would be an author.
Oh, there you go. Wow. The guy who barely made it through school writing a book, eh?
Yeah.
Underdog story again.
We wrote a children's book. So that's kind of counts, but
yeah, it kind of counts. But hey, you mean like and what would you write the book on?
Who knows? Like, again, because this is different, right? Like if I was going to write a book now, I would write it based on experiences. But if I was writing it after experiencing amnesia and not having any knowledge, maybe a fictional story. Probably like about a guy who gets amnesia and then has to figure out how to live life again. I don't know. It could be, yeah.
But how cool is this that we've both put something in the time capsule now, and we can listen back to this at some point in life. And you never know. I may have become a chef by that point, and you may have written multiple bestsellers. So that's really cool that
I thought of another one, like just a traveler, like either running travel tours or being a travel blogger or something like that. Yeah.
Hey, that's cool, dude. I mean, this is the thing. The future pages of our books are blank, and we are the ones that hold the pen, and we can write whatever the hell story we want. So I hope, like myself, I know that you're very pragmatic, but also give yourself permission to live in the clouds a little. And maybe one day we can both write a story that no one predicted, that no one saw coming. And I hope one day I do become a chef, even if it's for my own family, even if it's for myself. I hope that I get to be able to write a chapter that no one saw coming one day. And I hope you do too.
But the funny thing is as well, when I think about these things, like we were really focusing on things that are essentially unrelated to what we currently do right now. But when I think about it more, like if I could pick from any of the things, I'd probably be doing something pretty similar to what I'm doing right now, if that makes sense. Like I think it would still probably be trying to start or create something via the vehicle of business or entrepreneurship, and trying to share knowledge in some way, shape or form, which is this podcast. So it shows that there's probably pretty good level of alignment, but in that imaginary world, there would be a couple of the things that were completely unrelated.
It's actually very true, because when I think about what I do currently, I love every part of it. I really do. It's not like I want to be a chef because I want to escape from this. I love creating content. I love teaching people communication skills. I love inspiring people. I love doing it. I love doing these podcasts. So I mean, just, don't get me wrong. I love what I do. It's just, we had to write a completely different chapter. Well, Ali, thanks for joining me on this episode. And again, like I always say, man, I really appreciate you doing these podcasts with me, because I get so much from it. Yeah, I enjoy it. I don't want to talk to anybody else. I like talking to you. So thank you. And thanks to all our listeners for joining us. Thanks for being a part of the Vinh and Ali show. And as always, if you've got any recommendations on books that you'd like us to review in the future, please do reach out to us on social media, and do check out our podcast. If this is the first time you're listening, welcome to an unusual episode. Do consider subscribing and leaving us a review on the podcast platforms. Other than that, any parting words, Ali?
And that is all. You've got it.
Thanks, everyone. See you in the next episode.